welcome team. Mr. Rasmussen here. I know I can't be with you in person, so instead of me in person, you get the video version of me. And today we're going to talk about genetics, and we're going to talk about Mendel and what Mendel did and his experiments and stuff like that. So this is going to work kind of weird, and we'll see how it works, and you'll have to tell me when I get back. But I'm going to put a little pause thing up on the screen, and that'll tell you when to pause the video, and you will copy down all the notes while the video is paused, and then you can unpause the video and listen to me explain it to you, and then we'll go to the next slide, and you can pause the video, and so and so. So therefore, we'll get through as much as we can get through. So thank you for bearing with me. This is Chapter 9. We are starting my favorite topic, and this topic is genetics. Our first major part in genetics is talking about this guy here called Mendel. And Mendel is sort of where genetics started. I kind of think he looks like Dwight Schrute. If you guys know The Office, to me he kind of looks like Dwight Schrute. But he is not. He is Mendel. Dwight had a beet farm. Mendel raised peas, so very different. So we're going to talk about Mendel's legacy. Okay, so right here, this is where you would pause the video, and then you can listen to me talk about it. So, just a general overview of genetics. Genetics is the field of biology devoted to studying how traits are passed from parent to offspring. So we've always sort of wanted to know why children look the way they look. Why do you kind of look like mom and kind of look like dad, but you don't really, you're not a copy of either? So we've always been sort of trying to figure out how traits are passed. And so the field of genetics really started with this guy named Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk. He lived in Austria. He tended the garden, so he was the gardener of the monastery. But above and beyond that, he had a degree in statistics and math. So he wasn't, he was a very educated man, and he had a degree in statistics and math. And he wanted to use his degree in statistics and math and this tending of the garden to sort of determine how traits are passed from parent to offspring. Another term for you would be this term heredity. Heredity is just that transmission of genes from parent to offspring. How you got some genes from mom and some genes from dad, that's your heredity. I got some genes from my mother and some genes from my father. I think I got more from my father because I look a lot like him. But that's heredity, is this study of passing of genes from parent to offspring. So Mendel primarily worked, his subjects, or the things he worked on, primarily were garden pea plants. And he did it for a couple of really good reasons. One, they were readily available. He had a garden and he could easily grow peas. So peas were readily available. Also, peas came in either one of two varieties. There were traits on these peas that were really easy to observe, and they were either one thing or the other. So for instance, if we're going to look at flower color, pea plants either have purple flowers or white flowers. If we look at seed color, the seeds either come in yellow or green. The seeds either come in round or wrinkled, so one or the other. So as far as the plants are, they were really easy to study because they came in one or the other. Another really good reason why Mendel chose peas is because they grow really quickly. It would be sort of a bummer if you were doing oak trees and you really didn't get to see what the tree looked like, whether it was tall or short, until 100 years in. That would be a kind of a boring study. So garden pea plants, they grow really quick. They have these 7 traits that are really easy to observe, and these traits come in either one or the other. Here's a little joke for you. It says, Mendel wonders if heredity experiments might go faster if you use something other than redwood trees. I thought it was funny. Okay, so a couple terms for you. A trait is a characteristic that is varied between individuals, and a good example of a trait on me or on us humans is earlobes. Earlobes come in either one of two varieties. They come either connected or lobed. And mine are connected, so I have earlobes, and I don't know if you can see this on the video, but my earlobes are connected. Some of you have nice lobes where you can hang jewelry on. I don't have that. It looks like somebody stretched my ears out and slapped them to the side of my head. And so I don't have lobed earlobes, I just have connected earlobes. So that's a trait. It's a characteristic that's different between individuals. So Mendel is going to take these pea plants, and the big thing that Mendel did is he counted them. Mendel used math. Mendel was one of the very first biologists to ever use math. And so Mendel was really big about counting the pea plants and taking really meticulous records. And he counted so many pea plants I would have given up a long time ago. Okay. Just to understand what Mendel did, we need to have a general understanding of what a flower looks like. The flower is the reproductive part of a plant. So when a plant is going to do sexual reproduction, it uses a flower to do that. And it has two parts. It has the stamen, which are the male structures. They're these little stick-like things down here. They have the anther, which is the top part, and the filament, which sort of holds the anther up. And the whole purpose of this is to make pollen. So the male part of the flower is going to produce pollen. The female part of the flower, called the carpel over here, has three parts: the stigma, the style, and the ovary. And the stigma is this top sticky part here. The style is this long tube, and the ovary is down here. And the whole purpose of the carpel is to catch pollen and to channel pollen down this tube to fertilize the ovary down here. So pollen is going to get on the stigma, and it's going to go down here. Now, yeah, let's stay there for right now, and we'll talk about this other stuff in a little bit. So in order to do good genetic research, Mendel really had to control how pea plants were pollinated. He had to make sure the right pollen from the right flower got on the right stigma. So he really had to be careful about how plants were pollinated. And he got really ingenious. He would actually remove the male parts from some flowers, or he would sew up the flowers. And so he was really careful about controlling what pollen got where. So a couple of these terms. Pollination is just this process of putting pollen from the male part of the plant into the female plant. Self-pollination is when we do it all within one flower. When the male part of one flower goes to the female part of the same flower. So that's self-pollination, when the flowers pollinate themselves. And cross-pollination is when we get two pea plants and they pollinate each other. So we'll get two pea plants and they'll pollinate each other. Mendel first started, he wanted to start with plants where he kind of knew what was going on. So he grew plants that he called pure breeding. And a pure breeding plant always produces offspring of the trait when they self-pollinate. And what I mean by this is, if you can maybe hear my dog in the background. So pure breeding. So say for instance we had a purple flower. I'll just put a P for purple flower down here. And when we self-pollinated it, when we pollinated it with itself, all of the offspring would always be purple. Always. There would be nothing else that this plant could produce when self-pollinated except for purple flowers. That's what they call pure breeding. That when it's self-pollinated, only produces offspring with the same trait. So Mendel's first experiment was this. He's going to take two pure breeding plants, and he calls them the P generation, for parent generation. And he's going to take two pure breeding plants with different traits. For instance, he's going to take the purple flower, pure breeding, and the white flower pure breeding, and he's going to cross them with each other. I don't know if you can hear that, but my dog is drinking like crazy in the background, so if it sounds like maybe somebody going to the bathroom, it's not me, I promise. So, over here, so we have a purple flower, and it is crossed with a white flower, and Mendel realized that when he did this, he got only purple flowers. He called this the F1 generation. So when he crossed a purple flower with a white flower, Mendel got only purple flowers. So the F1 generation were always purple. Then what he did is he took one of these F1 generation flowers, right? So he took two of these F1 generation flowers and he crossed them. And he realized the weird thing, even though that they were all purple, when they crossed them in the F2 generation, 1/4 of them were white. So when he crossed a purple flower with a white flower, he got all purple flowers. But then when he crossed these purple flowers, he got 3 of them purple and 1 of them white. So these kind of weird results Mendel had to explain. On this next slide, I'll show you a chart, and you don't have to write anything down. So right here, here's Mendel's experiment. In his P generation, he crossed a purple flower with a white flower, and he got, bam, all purple flowers. Kind of surprising. You would think some of them would be white, or you'd think maybe there would be a combination in there. Maybe they'd be light purple, but he didn't see that. He saw only purple flowers. And then when he recrossed all these purple flowers from the F1 generation, he started to get white showing up. And it always showed up in this 3-to-1 ratio. Always showed up in the same 3-to-1 ratio. So Mendel knew there had to be something going on, and something going on that was big and explainable. And so that was his job, is he had to come up with a way of explaining what happened. Kind of funny. Another cartoon here says, "Brother Mendel, we grow tired of peas." I'm sure they ate a lot of peas. Okay, so if we talk about Mendel's conclusions, Mendel really needed to look at his data and come up with some solid conclusions. Okay, so he concluded that each trait was controlled by 2 factors. So it's not one thing that controls whether it's purple or white, but he says that it's 2 pieces of information, two chunks of information, and he called each one of these chunks of information an allele. So an allele is a piece of information that helps determine a trait. Mendel also concluded that one of these factors can totally hide the other. And he called this one that could hide the other, he called it dominant. So if a gene is dominant, it will hide the recessive gene. So one way of saying this is, if it's present, the dominant is always shown. So if there is a dominant gene, you'll always see it. Recessive, you can only see a recessive gene if no dominant genes is present. And if we look at my earlobes, the earlobes that I have, the connected earlobes, are recessive, which means that both pieces of information have to be recessive, and we use little letters to describe this. So both of those alleles, or both of those pieces of information, have to be recessive, because otherwise, if either one of those pieces of information was a big E, you would see the dominant. Okay? If that doesn't make a lot of sense to you right now, we'll cover that more in a little bit. Okay, one of the last things I want to talk about is this. This is Mendel's 2 laws. Mendel came up with 2 really big, important laws of genetics. And they are really hard to explain. So bear with me, and when I get back, if you have questions about them, you can definitely ask me. So the first one is the law of segregation. And the law of segregation states that each gamete receives only one of each allele. This means this, that say for instance, my earlobes look like this. I have two little E's. So each one of my pieces of information are recessive. Well, when I am making egg or sperm cells, my child will get only one of these. My child won't get both. Okay? This is before we knew about chromosomes and homologous pairs, and that's the reason why. But it's important to understand that Mendel realized that when you make egg and sperm, or when you make gametes, you only donate half of the genetic information to your children. So my future children will only get either this E or this E. They will never get both. Okay, that's the first law. The second law is that factors separate from each other during the formation of gametes. This has to do with two traits. Say, for instance, we're looking at a trait for tall and a trait for ears. So say, for instance, I have the tall trait, which makes me tall, which it doesn't, I'm short. And I have the E trait, which gives me little ears. Mendel said that these two are not connected. Because I get this E, it doesn't guarantee that I get this T. I could get either E or either T. That these factors are not connected in any way, shape, or form. And that's the second law. So the first law says the alleles are not connected. You will only donate one to your offspring. And the other one says that all your traits are not connected, that you will, it doesn't matter whether your children they get the tall gene, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have any effect on what type of earlobes they'll get. So those are Mendel's two laws. We're going to, in the future here when I get back, we're going to look at genetic crosses. We may even do that on Friday. But yeah, so this is a great place to start. Thank you very much, team. I hope it was informative. We'll see you when I get back.